It was a beautiful sunny afternoon before winter, like 6 months ago. I was outside in a t shirt, soaking up the sun, sunbathing, when I decided to go to Barnes and Noble and buy a book. And I ended up buying The Three Body Problem. It was a book I'd heard of. I'd heard of this book, Three Body Problem, supposed to be really good. There was a quote from Barack Obama on the cover. This book is great. So I decided, screw it, I'm going to read it. And I'll be honest, guys, when I read the Three Body book, I read it like a teenager back when I used to binge. When I was a kid, my nickname in elementary school was literally Reader Boy. I always had a book in my hands. I remember when Harry Potter books came out, when the fourth Harry Potter book, the one where is it Goblet of Fire? They have to do like the fucking Hogwarts Olympics, and then Voldemort interrupts everything. I remember I read that book on a family vacation, and I think I sat there and I read 500 pages in like 8 hours. Like I sat in my room in our little shared vacation house that like my entire extended family had rented for a week. And I just read Harry Potter for like 8 days. Didn't go to the beach, didn't go to get ice cream or whatever the hell they were doing, mini golf, I don't know. I just read and I read and I read. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because that is how I felt when I walked out of that Barnes and Noble with the Three Body Problem, the first book of the three, in my hands. I didn't realize it, but I was heading for one of those binges. I read the first book in like a week, the second book in like 4 days, and the last book I read in a day and a half. The last book, which is the longest book, I was just sitting on the couch right over there, just reading for a day and a half. I mean, I barely did anything else. When I lock in, I go full binge on books, but it very rarely happens. So the fact that Three Body got me into that zone just was like, wow, what a book. What an amazing experience. It's always nice when that happens. So when I heard they were doing a series, a TV adaptation of Three Body Problem of the series, technically it's called Remembrances of Earth's Past, and the Three Body Problems is the first book of the series. Everyone tends to call it the Three Body Problem trilogy, though. I was pretty skeptical. The idea of adapting the series into a TV show, even though the books were so good, I was like, there's no way, right? Because the books are hard sci fi, tons of math, advanced deep space sci fi, multiple languages, a plot spanning the entire globe. I mean, the book's written in English, the translation, the original book was in Chinese. But like the characters in the book are all over the world in multiple areas, different languages, different things. So I was like, how are you going to turn this into a TV show? There's no way. And I gotta say, uh, the TV show had a very challenging task ahead of it, and they did okay. They did okay. I am not about to give a glowing review, but they did pretty good considering how challenging the material was. For this whole review, I'm going to be keeping that in mind. It was a very difficult book to adapt. With that said, one of the most obvious things, if you did read the book, and if you didn't, you're not going to notice this, and it's not even necessarily a big deal, but the characters have been Hollywoodized or Netflixized or whatever. They are more diverse in terms of identity, but much blander in terms of personality. The former doesn't bother me at all. I don't care if you, what they call race bending the characters. Like, the original book is mostly a bunch of Chinese scientists and, like, I don't know, like Korean, Indian scientists. Like, it's very much in that area of the world. And I would have been totally fine if that was what the characters were, but they decided to make it more of a global audience appeal by bringing in more like Americans, basically. And so the core cast, far from being a bunch of nerdy, kind of awkward scientists like the book portrays, is a very lovable group of four friends, two women, two men. It's mostly like two guys and a lady. The three of them are kind of like the core crew. But, at the vacation house where there's a plot, I won't get into details. But, like, it's very much a sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, Cheers, like old school, like a bunch of friends hanging out, having good times kind of vibe, going on adventures, which is very different from the book. My main criticism of this is that the characters are a lot blander. So I don't mind like the main cast of Friends. I think Saul is a really good character, really likable. They're fine. They're not that deep. Like Saul is always the best guy possible. He's never mean to anyone in any way. Uh, and all three of them are kind of like that. Like they're all like kind of angels. Like none of them are in any way mean to each other in any way. They're just like perfect friends. It's like a little bit bland almost in that sense, their relationships, but it's fine. A worse example, though, is if you look at Thomas Wade. In the books, Thomas Wade's character is a sadist. He's not just an asshole, he's a sadist. He literally enjoys other people's pain. And he's not like a dominatrix or whatever. It's not like it's that explicit. But like the whole point of his character is that he is a total asshole with no regard, no regret, doesn't give a shit. In the TV show version we see of him, he is mildly a dick. He's like occasionally a little bit rude. It's so far removed from the sadistic and almost like evil character of Thomas Wade, which makes it really interesting because the whole point of his character in the book, while avoiding all the spoilers, is that in spite of his absolute complete asshole nature that is not redeemed, he is the character with the right skills to achieve certain goals, which the good guys need his help to do. So it's like the kind of complicated nature of him being a legitimate asshole that isn't redeemed, but he's also helpful to the good guy characters. That's like part of what makes Thomas Wade so interesting. I think a lot of these characters have something like that about them. Interesting personalities, and I think the TV show has flatlined all those personalities. It's so much more generic. It's so much more just like typical like Marvel movie flat characters. So that's probably the worst thing about this whole adaptation is like they didn't need to do that to the characters. I have no problem if they decide to race or gender bend certain characters. A bunch of the male scientists are all of a sudden female scientists, and like there's even one really like obvious joke where like one of the ladies is talking to the other one and it's like, "Oh, I was talking to my nanoscientist, blah blah blah," and the other character is like, "Oh, who is he?" And she's like, "Actually, it's a woman." And she's like, "Oh Jesus, I can't believe I said that." It's like these little moments where it's kind of like pandering. It's fine, but it's just not like stuff like that is very of the moment. But I have no problem with it so long as the characters are well written and the story is good. My only beef here is that the characters became a lot more bland. Other than that, I don't care. Make them all ladies. Make them all any race you want. I don't give a shit. I just want good characters. Another kind of odd thing, and then I'll get to some of the stuff I liked, is that they combined plots from all three books into the first season here. So I'm going to really go out of my way to avoid spoilers. I'm going to mention a early season, episode 2, episode 3, just like beginning of an arc. So one of the characters is your last chance to run away if you're scared of hearing about like how an arc starts in episode 3. But one of the characters ends up being diagnosed with cancer, and it's like really bad, and is like probably going to die. And that's a book 3 plot. And that happens right at the start of season 1. There was a couple other one, like I believe book 2 has a really substantial plot which they also like incorporated in the series. I actually can't even remember what comes from what book because they mix it all together. But it felt like they took a lot of the most iconic scenes, like there's one scene where they show off like a hibernation system that could be theoretically used go to the future by hibernating. That's like book 2. The video game stuff in this series, there's like a virtual reality video game. That's book 1. So they basically took some of the most exciting plots from all three books and like some of the most iconic scenes and put them all into season 1. I don't think they used up all the good stuff by any means, but it does have me wondering, A, is it confusing for people who didn't read the books? Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's confusing because I did read the books and I'm so confused by like the new arrangement of the things. But they really twisted around like when the plots happen, and they took the plots and the characters and they shuffled everything around pretty much. So I don't know if that's more confusing because I read the books or if the books help me understand better, but it's a lot of stuff, and it kind of feels like they went right to all the best moments without necessarily earning them, which is one of the things that makes it feel a little bit like lacking in depth and occasionally a little bit less exciting. Is like these big payoffs almost happen too quickly and too frequently. It's like there's not enough build up. You have like the generic friends at the vacation house, and then they go off on their zany adventures. And then you have like these crazy sci-fi scenes, but it's like there's not really the connective tissue to bring them together. At least not in the way the book. In the book, they build up so hard, and then these big moments are so epic. In the show, they're a little bit too easy. With that said, I thought the cinematography and the visuals were actually excellent, especially with the challenging, super deep math and sci fi concepts, and even stuff like in episode 1, one of the first plots, where the nanotech lady is seeing a countdown in her visual. Like, she sees this countdown and no one else can see it, and she's like freaking out about it. Like, when the book does it, I definitely thought like this would be not not easy to adapt. Like, how would you make this work on a TV show? Or like when the universe flickers at them, and like in the book they're like measuring radiation or something, like, but in the show they just have the stars literally flickering. So it's like they did a good job of translating some of the hard math stuff into cinematography, and like a lot of stuff like the big scene, not going to spoil, very generic, very vaguely, the big scene with the boat, the boat incident, really well done visually. All the visual countdown stuff was cool, the flickering of the stars, like I said. I felt like even just like, I don't know, all the big science labs where they're doing the nanotech stuff and everything, like all the sets were really good. And that kind of connects to something else, which is that this story is so huge, different areas of the world, different languages. One thing I like that this show does do is actually everyone speaks in their actual language. So there's a lot of English scenes, but there's also scenes where they are speaking in, I know there's different versions of Chinese. I don't know if it's Cantonese or what. I can't distinguish, but they're speaking Chinese or speaking, like a bunch of different languages, basically. I don't even know exactly. I forget which ones they spoke. I think they might speak French in ones. Like, I liked how they showed different areas of the world with these different scientists, and it's like always subtitled with the people actually speaking the language. That was fun, and there's lots of moments like that. Lots of different sets, lots of characters, different, languages and different things. So like, there's a lot to fucking deal with. I do think it's easy to hold these projects to an extremely high standard. Like, well, I watched a Christopher Nolan movie, and it was, a little bit, when I watched Tenet, like they really made the ideas tie together really well, but in this show it was a little bit more awkward. Tenet actually makes no sense. That's a bad example, but you know what I mean? Like, you can compare it to like Chris Nolan and like what's the guy who made Avatar, James Cameron. Like, you can compare to these giant movies, but in a world where I can't even film a single scene of anything, I'd have my phone on a fucking thing taped to the wall. I'd be trying to act, and it'd be the worst acting of all time. I can't do this shit. So it is really impressive on some level. But from a critical artiste perspective, artistically looking at it, I think, yeah, plot, characters, all that stuff, pretty underwhelming. Cinematography, though, visuals, most of the visual aspects was really good. And I think that's one of the things that, with the big scope and the good cinematography and the fact that these huge scenes do look really good and they did a good job adapting them for the show, that gives it enough of a fun aspect, along with the fact that the main plot, while dumbed down with the sitcom style zany adventures with the main characters, like the group of friends thing that isn't really in the book, that stuff is fine. It's good enough vibes. So the good vibes, the big cinematography, the huge scope of the show, the fact that it's done reasonably well, it makes it like, it's almost like bad in a good way. It's like somewhere between like a C plus because it's just okay, and then at other times it's like, this is actually kind of terrible, but in a way that's good. Like, it's so bad that it's good sometimes, and other times it's just pretty good. So it ends up being quite enjoyable, even if on a critical level it's like a 6 to 7 out of 10. I'm not giving it like a super high score. One other thing I didn't mention, which I'll briefly mention, is I thought some of the acting was actually really bad. The main character, they changed all the fucking characters, so I don't even know the names. Like, they shuffled around all the book characters, but the character, like, I don't even know how to describe her. The character who works for Thomas Wade, who's like the main scientist, that like is kind of in the group of friends, but not really. I don't even know. I'll look it up. What's her name? The character of is it Jin? Yeah, Jin Chang, played by Jess Hong. No offense, her performance is really bland. I will say, like, all the stuff with Jin and like her whole character is just kind of like, I don't really understand like the way she's approaching the character. It feels like she has no emotion in the whole show. I don't know. Anyway, some of the acting was kind of weird, but yeah, wrapping things up here, I think I've said pretty much what I want to say. I want one more thing. There's one terrible CGI moment. The scene with the monkey coming out of hibernation. They're showing off this hibernation thing, and the monkey like wakes up and eats a banana, and then he throws up. Spoiler alert. Like, the CGI on that monkey is so bad. Like, they should have left that scene out. I don't know what they should have done differently, but that monkey, that was the one time in the show the visuals were so bad. And it actually was surprising to me because the rest of the show had really good visuals. So anyway, overall, this is a dumbed down, more generic version of the books, but it could have been a lot worse. It is a massive scale, multiple languages, translating advanced math, hard sci fi to a TV show that's aimed at a mass market. They deserve some credit for making it work. It's a bit of a bad but fun kind of watch as opposed to like a really good watch, but I still liked it. I definitely recommend the books for people who want like the transcendent experience of amazing literature because this TV show isn't it. It's not going to capture that feeling. But it was pretty good. I liked it, and to be honest, I hope they do season 2 because I would like to watch more. It's more of a schlocky kind of thing to watch for fun as opposed to the books, which are like mind bending. But it's still fun. I hope they'll do a season 2. If they do, I'll watch it. So that's the Flux Meter on Three Body Problems TV show. And thanks for watching. Bye bye.